During his campaign for the presidency, Donald Trump regularly called for increasing tariffs on goods imported into the United States, suggesting he might impose a 10% tariff on all imports, with an even higher 60% tariff on goods imported from China. And in just the last week, he's threatened Mexico and Canada with 25% tariffs if they don't increase efforts to prevent illegal migration and drug trafficking into the United States, and a 100% tariff on goods imported from the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, if they move away from the US dollar as their reserve currency. But what exactly are tariffs, and how would this kind of policy shape international trade? Hey everyone, I'm Noah Zerbe. I'm a professor of political science at California State Polytechnic University Humboldt. Welcome to Global Insights, where we break down the global politics and international economics of the day to help you understand the world around us. Let's start with the basics. At its core, a tariff is a tax that a government places on goods imported into a country, or less commonly on exports. Tariffs can be a flat fee, like a $50 fee for every car imported to the country, or a percentage of the item's value, like a 10% tariff on all goods imported into the United States. While this sounds straightforward, tariffs have complex effects, influencing both domestic economies and international trade relationships. Tariffs are a classic example of what's usually described as protectionism in international political economy. Under protectionist policies, governments use tools like tariffs to shield domestic industries from global competition. Today, tariffs continue to be a powerful and often controversial tool in global economy, balancing national interests with economic impacts on a larger scale. So, why do governments use tariffs? There are a few key reasons for this practice. First, governments will sometimes try to use tariffs to protect domestic industries. Indeed, this is one of the primary motivations. By making imports more expensive, tariffs give domestic industries a competitive edge, allowing them to grow without being undercut by cheaper foreign products. If a country wants to protect its steel industry, for instance, it might impose a tariff on imported steel to encourage consumers to buy locally produced steel. This idea aligns with the idea of economic nationalism, the view that protecting national industries is essential to economic stability and independence. Tariffs can also be used for revenue generation. Indeed, before income taxes became the norm, tariffs were a major source of government funding. Even today, particularly in developing countries, tariffs provide crucial revenue to fund infrastructure, healthcare, education, and so on. In terms of development economics, tariffs can help countries build the resources necessary to grow and sustain themselves. Tariffs are also used as a tool of international trade negotiations. If one country perceives another country's trade practices as unfair, it might impose tariffs in response, a policy generally referred to as countervailing tariffs. However, the risk is that this can quickly escalate into a trade war, with each country adding tariffs on the other's exports, impacting trade flows and diplomatic relationships. This is why organizations like the World Trade Organization seek to limit the use of tariffs. They want to avoid these dangerous escalations and promote fair and open markets. And finally, in some cases, countries impose tariffs on products seen as essential to national security. The U.S. has placed tariffs on critical materials like steel and high-tech components, arguing that these measures protect domestic industries and the technologies necessary for national defense. This use of tariff falls under strategic trade theory, which suggests that certain industries must be protected to maintain a country's long-term competitiveness. But tariffs don't always work as intended. There's often a misconception that tariffs are paid by foreign governments. In reality, a tariff is paid by the importer of the goods into the country. For instance, if the U.S. imposes a 10% tariff on all imported goods, it's American companies importing those goods that pay those taxes. And these companies often pass those costs on to consumers in the form of higher prices. As a result, tariffs almost always lead to higher prices for consumers. If tariffs are placed on foreign cars, for example, American consumers might see an increase in car prices, which can impact consumer demand and spending habits. While companies may absorb some of the tariff costs by reducing their profit margins, most often they pass those costs on to the consumer. As a result, most economists argue that tariffs distort markets and reduce consumer welfare by increasing prices. While tariffs aim to protect jobs in certain industries, they can inadvertently hurt jobs in others. If the U.S. imposes tariffs on aluminum, for instance, it might help American aluminum producers, but it will likely hurt industries that rely on aluminum, like the automotive or beverage sectors. This is a common dilemma in trade policy, the tension between protecting jobs in some sectors while risking job losses in others. And more broadly, tariffs don't just affect the countries that impose them, they sometimes reshape global trade networks. When countries impose tariffs, they often drive trading partners to seek new suppliers or new markets, disrupting global supply chains. This is part of what's been called economic interdependence, a concept that describes how countries are connected through trade networks. Disruptions to this interdependence can lead to shifts in global economic alliances as countries reevaluate who they can rely on. And we're already seeing some of this shift take place in anticipation of the proposed tariff on Chinese goods. Major companies like footwear retailer Steve Madden, tool manufacturer Stanley Black & Decker, and Foxconn, a key supplier for Apple, are all moving production to other low-cost countries like India, Mexico, and Vietnam. Other companies have sped up import of goods subject to new tariffs, trying to avoid higher costs down the line. And it's important to note that trading partners often respond to tariffs with their own countermeasures. When the U.S. imposed tariffs on certain industrial significant technological Chinese goods in 2018, for example, China retaliated with tariffs on U.S. exports targeting products like soybeans, pork, and cars. This tit-for-tat escalation is a hallmark of trade wars, which can disrupt international markets and create uncertainty for businesses and consumers alike. In the end, it's difficult to forecast the exact impact of Trump's proposed tariffs. This might just be a negotiating tactic, trying to cajole opponents and allies alike into making policy concessions. But the threat might also be real, and if the proposed tariffs come into force, the industries most reliant on imports, like apparel, electronics, and household goods, will likely feel it the most. Some estimates suggest that universal tariffs could cost American families thousands of dollars per year in higher prices, with reports from the National Retail Federation, for example, estimating the cost being up to $7,600 per year. I'll link to that report in the video description. But this discussion on tariffs is more than just about higher prices or specific trade policy. It reflects a larger trend. Are we moving away from an era of globalization and open markets towards a new age of economic nationalism and protectionism? This shift has major implications for the future of international trade and economic relations, especially as countries weigh the benefits and costs of interdependence against the desire for self-sufficiency. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any questions or want to suggest future topics, please let me know in the comments section below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on future episodes of Global Insights. Bye, everyone.